Breathe. Just for a moment, let the world fall away. Let the noise of the street, the chatter of 1,000 screens, the relentless hum of expectation, let it all fade into the background. Come back into this space, this quiet cathedral of the self. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest. That rhythm, that steady, unassuming pulse, has been with you since your first moment. It is the quiet drumbeat of life itself, a rhythm that persists beneath the chaotic symphony of your thoughts, your feelings, your fleeting reactions. And in the space between those breaths, I want you to consider a simple yet world-altering idea. You are not your emotions. You are not the sudden, hot flush of anger that rises in your chest when you feel wronged. You are not the cold, creeping dread that whispers of tomorrow's uncertainties. You are not the wave of sadness that threatens to pull you under when loss comes to visit, an all too frequent guest in the house of a human life. You are not the giddy, soaring elation of a momentary triumph, nor the hollow ache of loneliness that can find you even in a crowded room. These are visitors. They are weather patterns passing through the open sky of your awareness. And you are the sky. You are the stillness that holds the storm, the clarity that holds the clouds, the deep, unchanging blue that is present even when obscured by the thickest fog. The weather is not the sky, and the emotion is not you. We have forgotten this. We have become a culture of chasers, of reactors. We have been taught to identify so closely with every feeling that we mistake it for our very essence. We say, I am angry, not I feel anger. We say, I am sad, not I feel sadness. In that subtle shift of language, we give away our power. We hand the reins of our inner citadel to these fleeting, often irrational tyrants. We become the storm, tossed and turned by its winds, forgetting that we are the unshakable space in which it all unfolds. The ancients knew this. The Stoics, those grizzled philosophers of the Roman portico, built their entire worldview on this foundation. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, a man who held the fate of the known world in his hands, sat in his cold campaign tent at the edge of the empire, battling barbarians without and battling his own mind within. And what did he write to himself, not for publication, not for fame, but for his own survival? He reminded himself again and again to see things as they are, strip it bare of the emotional costume we so readily dress them in. He would look at a fine roasted meat and see not a delicacy, but the dead body of an animal. He would look at a vintage wine, a Falernian prized across the empire, and see fermented grape juice. He would look at the royal purple of his own robes and see sheep's wool stained with the gore of a shellfish. This wasn't cynicism. It was a practice, a discipline. It was an attempt to break the spell, to dissolve the subjective layer of judgment and emotion that we project onto the world, and to see reality in its raw, unvarnished form. Because it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgment about them. This is the cornerstone, the master key. An event is just an event. It is neutral. It is a falling rock, a delayed shipment, a harsh word, a diagnosis from a doctor. It simply is. The story we tell ourselves about the event, that is what creates the suffering. The judgment that this is bad, that this is unfair, that this is the end of the world, that is the source of our turmoil. Think of the last time you were consumed by rage. Perhaps someone cut you off in traffic. In that moment, the event was simply one car moving in front of another, a neutral physical reality. But the story was different. The story was about disrespect. It was about injustice. It was about me. That person deliberately slighted me. They think their time is more important than mine. They put me in danger. And with that story came the fire. The cortisol spike, the clenched jaw, the racing heart. You did not feel anger because of a car. You felt anger because of the narrative you instantly, unconsciously wrapped around it. But what if you could learn to pause in that infinitesimal gap between the event and the story? What if you could cultivate enough inner space to simply observe the event, to see the car move, and to choose the story you tell? What if the story was not, "I have been wronged," but perhaps that person is rushing to the hospital. Perhaps they are distracted by a deep and personal pain. Or perhaps they are simply a poor driver. In the light of these alternative stories, where does the rage go? It dissolves. It has no fuel. It cannot survive without the oxygen of your personal judgment. This is not suppression. It is not denial. We are not pretending the emotion doesn't exist. To suppress an emotion is to try to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense effort, and eventually it will burst to the surface with even greater force, often at the most inopportune time. No, this is different. This is observation. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a river. The emotions are logs floating by. The anger log, the sadness log, the fear log. Your habit, your lifelong conditioning, has been to jump into the churning water and wrestle with every log, to push the bad ones away, to cling desperately to the good ones. And in doing so, you are swept away by the current. You are battered, bruised, and exhausted. The Stoic practice is to simply stay on the bank, to watch the logs float by, to note their shade, their texture, their speed. Ah, there is anger. Look at its jagged edges. Look how swiftly it moves. You acknowledge it. You name it. You might even feel its cold spray as it passes. But you do not jump in. You do not identify with the log. You are the observer on the bank, and the river is just doing what a river does. You remain still, rooted, present. The log came, and the log will go. The river continues to flow, but you are not carried away by it. This is the beginning of freedom, the first taste of true inner peace. Not a peace that depends on the world being a certain way, on traffic flowing smoothly, on people always being kind, on plans unfolding without a hitch. That is a fragile, dependent peace, forever at the mercy of external chaos. This is a peace that comes from within, an unshakable peace, the peace of the sky that is not disturbed by the passing storm, the peace of the observer who is not swept away by the river. It is the peace of knowing in your very bones that you are not your emotions. You are the silent, spacious awareness that holds them all. And in that holding, in that gentle, non-judgmental awareness, you will find a strength you never knew you possessed. A quiet power that can withstand any storm, any tide, any darkness that life may send your way. It is the power of the inner citadel, the fortress of the self that no external force can ever truly conquer, because its foundations are not built on the shifting sands of feeling, but on the bedrock of pure conscious presence. The world will continue its frantic dance, its cacophony of joy and sorrow, triumph and despair. Let it. Your task is not to stop the music, but to find your own still point in the turning world, and to listen for the first time to the profound and steady silence of your own being. This inner work, this cultivation of the observer, is not a passive retreat from life. It is the highest form of action, It is the training of the soul's warrior. The ancient world was a brutal, unforgiving place. Seneca, another great Stoic mind, was a statesman, a playwright, one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He was also an advisor to the tyrant Nero. He lived at the very heart of power, with all its paranoia, intrigue, and sudden violence. He knew that an undisciplined mind was a death sentence. He was eventually ordered by Nero to take his own life, an order he met with a calm and philosophical acceptance that stunned his friends and family. Where did this strength come from? It came from a lifetime of practice, a lifetime of standing on the riverbank. Seneca saw life as a series of indifference, health, wealth, reputation, even life and death itself. These were not inherently good or bad. They were merely the raw materials, the clay that fate provided. The only true good, the only thing of ultimate value, was virtue. And what is virtue? It is using these materials, whatever they may be, with wisdom, with courage, with justice, with moderation. It is how you play the hand you are dealt. You may be dealt a hand of immense suffering, poverty, illness, betrayal. You may be dealt a hand of great fortune, wealth, power, admiration. To the Stoic, both hands are a test. The test is the same. Will you act with virtue? Will you use this material to build a character of integrity and strength? Or will you let it deform you into a creature of fear, greed, and despair? The emotion is the first, raw, animal reaction. It tells you that the pain of betrayal is betrayal. It tells you that the pleasure of praise is good. The observer, the trained mind, steps in and asks a different question. It asks, how can I use this? How can I use this betrayal to practice forgiveness and resilience? How can I use this praise to practice humility and to remember my own fallibility? The emotion is a blind reaction. The virtuous response is a conscious choice. This is the discipline of assent. It is the power to choose what we give our assent to, what we agree with. An impression flashes into our mind. My boss just criticized my work in front of everyone. This is humiliating. My career is over. This is the first impression, the raw data mixed with a raw emotional judgment. Now the trained mind applies the discipline. Do I assent to this whole package? Do I agree that this is, in fact, humiliating and that my career is over? Or do I dissect it? My boss pointed out an error in my work. Fact, neutral. He did it in front of my colleagues. Fact, neutral. I feel a hot sensation of shame in my chest and face. A physiological and emotional reality. A log in the river, I can observe it. Now the judgment, this is humiliating. My career is over. Do I assent to this? Is it truly a fact that I am humiliated? Humiliation is a judgment, an internal story of diminished self-worth. I can choose not to assent to it. I can choose to see this as an opportunity to learn, to demonstrate grace under pressure, to show that I am more concerned with the quality of the work than with my own ego. Is my career truly over because of one mistake? This is a catastrophic prediction, a story spun from fear. I can choose not to assent to it. I can choose the story of resilience. I will correct the mistake. I will learn from it. I will demonstrate my value through my actions, not through a fantasy of perfection. This is the alchemy of Stoicism. It is turning lead into gold, not by changing the external event, but by changing the internal response. The raw material, the lead of a public criticism, is transmuted into the gold of humility, resilience, and renewed focus. This power is available to you in every moment. In the long line at the grocery store, in the face of an angry client, in the quiet dread of a looming deadline, in the ache of a past regret. In every circumstance, you have a choice. Will you be yanked about by the puppet strings of your first automatic impressions? Or will you pause, breathe, and consciously choose your response? Will you be the puppet or the puppet master? Epictetus, a man who knew more about the absence of freedom than almost anyone, made this his central teaching. He was born a slave. His name literally means acquired. His leg was permanently crippled when one of his masters, in a fit of rage, deliberately twisted it until it snapped. He lived a life that, from the outside, was completely devoid of power. And yet, he became one of the most powerful teachers of freedom the world has ever known, because he understood where true freedom lies. He taught that the world is divided into two categories: that which is within our control and that which is not. Outside of our control are our bodies, our property, our reputations, the actions of others, the unfolding of fate. We can influence these things, certainly, but we do not have ultimate command over them. Your body will age and get sick. Your wealth can be lost. Your reputation can be tarnished by lies. People will act in ways you cannot predict or prevent. To place the key to your happiness and tranquility in any of these things is to build your house on the sand. It is to hand the key to your own prison cell to 1,000 different jailers. But what is within our control? Our judgments, our intentions, our desires, our aversions, the inner world of our own mind. As Epictetus would say, your reasoned choice. That is the one thing no one can take from you. Not a cruel master, not a tyrannical emperor, not a devastating illness, not even death itself. Your power to choose how you interpret the world, what you value, and how you decide to act, that is your inviolable birthright. Think of Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years in a tiny cell on Robben Island. By every external measure, he was powerless. His jailers controlled his every movement, his food, his contact with the outside world. They sought to break his spirit, to reduce him to a number, but they could not control his mind. He and his fellow prisoners used that time. They turned the prison into a university. They studied, they debated, they disciplined their minds. Mandela learned the language and culture of his Afrikaner guards, not as a tactic, but as a way to understand them, to see their humanity, to refuse to assent to the judgment of hatred. He chose to forge his suffering into a tool for reconciliation. He emerged from that crucible not broken, but refined, not filled with bitterness, but with a profound and unshakable dignity that would change the course of a nation. He controlled what he could control. He chose the story. He did not control the prison, but he commanded the citadel of his own soul. That is the power Epictetus spoke of. It is not the power to move mountains, but the power to remain unmoved when the mountains crumble around you. It is the recognition that the cage is external, but the freedom is internal. We often believe that our emotions are sacred messengers, that their intensity is a measure of their truth. If we feel overwhelming fear, it must mean we are in overwhelming danger. If we feel deep offense, it must mean a deep wrong has been committed. The Stoic asks us to challenge this assumption, to treat our emotions not as infallible oracles, but as house guests who need to be politely questioned. Hello, anger. What are you here to tell me? That a value of mine has been violated, perhaps? Let's examine that. Is it the value of respect, or is it my ego's desire to never be challenged? Hello, anxiety. You are telling me a story of a terrible future. What evidence do you have for this story? And how much of it is conjecture? How much is a ghost story I am telling myself in the dark? This is not a cold, unfeeling process. It is a deeply compassionate one. It is the ultimate act of self-care. It is refusing to allow the unexamined, panic voices in your head to run your life. It is about becoming your own wise and gentle parent. When a child is terrified of a monster under the bed, a good parent doesn't say, "Your fear is stupid." They don't say, "Just suppress it." They say, "Let's take a look together." They turn on the light. They get down on the floor and lift the bed skirt. And in the light of gentle, rational examination, the monster is revealed to be nothing but a shadow and a pile of old shoes. Your panic, your rage, your despair, these are the monsters under your bed. The practice of Stoicism is the practice of turning on the light. It is looking calmly and directly at the thing that seems so terrifying and stripping it of its power by stripping it of the story that gives it life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to deconstruct things, to break them down into their component parts. A terrifying public speech is not a single monstrous entity. It is a series of moments, walking to the podium, taking a breath, saying the first word, seeing a friendly face in the crowd. Broken down, it becomes manageable. The monster of the speech dissolves into a sequence of neutral actions. The emotion of fear, which feeds on the monstrous whole, starves when faced with the mundane reality of the parts. So the next time a wave of emotion rises within you, do not fight it. Do not surrender to it. Do not identify with it. Simply pause. Breathe, feel its physical sensation in your body. Notice the story it is trying to sell you, and then with the quiet authority of the observer on the riverbank, with the gentle power of the parent turning on the light, ask the question, is this true? And in that question, in that sacred pause, you will find your freedom. You will find the still point. You will remember the sky that holds the weather. You will come home to yourself, to the unshakable, untouchable core of your own being. And you will realize that you were never the storm. You were always and will always be the one who watches it pass. This practice of observation, of non-identification, extends even to the most challenging of human experiences, pain and adversity. We are conditioned to see pain as the ultimate evil, something to be avoided at all costs. Our entire modern world is, in many ways, an elaborate machine designed to insulate us from discomfort. Climate control, instant entertainment, readily available comforts. We live in a sensory paradise our ancestors could not have imagined. And yet, are we any more content? Are we any more resilient? Or has our aversion to discomfort made us more fragile, more easily broken when life inevitably presents us with something we cannot control, something that hurts? The Stoics had a radically different perspective. They did not seek out pain, but they did not run from it. They saw it as an indispensable part of life's training ground. For them, a life without hardship was like a ship that had never left the harbor. It might be safe, but it is not what a ship is for. It is untested, its timbers unstressed, its captain unseasoned. It is only in the storm that the true quality of the vessel and its pilot is revealed. Adversity, then, is not a curse. It is a crucible. It is the fire that burns away the impurities and forges the steel of character. Admiral James Stockdale, a modern-day exemplar of this philosophy, credited the teachings of Epictetus with his survival as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He was the highest-ranking American officer in the infamous Hanoi Hilton. He was tortured over 15 times, held in solitary confinement for 4 years, and had no reason to believe he would ever see his family again. He lived in a world of absolute, relentless pain and uncertainty. And what did he hold on to? Not a fluffy, optimistic hope that he would be out by Christmas. He saw that kind of optimism break other men when Christmas came and went, year after year. Instead, he held on to two competing ideas, a paradox that is the very heart of Stoic resilience. First, he accepted the brutal reality of his situation completely. He never deluded himself about the horror he was facing. He looked the monster in the eye. Second, he maintained an unwavering faith that he would in the end prevail. Not that the external circumstances would magically fix themselves, but that he would prevail by enduring, by maintaining his honor, his integrity, and his duty to his fellow prisoners. He could not control his captors. He could not control the length of the war. He could not control the pain inflicted upon his body. But he could control his response. He could refuse to betray his country. He could refuse to give up his dignity. He could refuse to let them break his spirit. He focused every ounce of his energy on that small, sacred circle of his own volition. This is the Stoic approach to pain. You do not deny its existence. You do not pretend it doesn't hurt. The first dart. The initial sensation of pain is unavoidable. When the torturer tightens the ropes, the body screams. When the diagnosis is delivered, the heart plummets. That is the first dart, an involuntary physical or emotional reality. But then comes the second dart. This is the dart we throw at ourselves. It is the judgment we add on top of the pain. This is awful. I can't stand this. Why me? This will never end. My life is over. This second dart of judgment, of protest, of self-pity, this is what turns pain into suffering. This is what makes the unbearable truly unbearable. Stockdale, through his study of Epictetus, had trained himself to refuse the second dart. He accepted the pain of the first dart as a present reality, but he refused to add the poison of suffering. He would say to himself, I am a philosopher. I am here to play the role fate has assigned me. He turned the torture chamber into his own personal stoa, his own classroom for the study of virtue. He used the pain as a stimulus to practice courage. He used the isolation as a stimulus to practice inner discipline. He used the despair of his fellow prisoners as a stimulus to practice leadership and compassion. The pain was the raw material. He chose to sculpt it into a monument of human endurance. This is the meaning of the famous Stoic phrase, amor fati, a love of one's fate. It is not a passive resignation. It is not a weak surrender. It is an active, enthusiastic embrace of whatever comes. It is the profound recognition that everything that happens, every obstacle, every setback, every loss, is a perfect opportunity to practice some virtue. It is to see the universe not as a benevolent friend or a malicious enemy, but as a perfect, impartial trainer. If the universe sends you poverty, it is training you in moderation and self-reliance. If it sends you wealth, it is training you in generosity and non-attachment. If it sends you a difficult person, it is training you in patience and forgiveness. If it sends you a sudden, unexpected loss, it is training you in courage and reminding you of what truly matters. The obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Imagine a fire. A small flame can be extinguished by a handful of twigs, but a great roaring blaze turns everything that is thrown into it into more fuel for its own growth. Your goal is to become that fire, to cultivate an inner disposition so robust, so powerful, that it can metabolize any obstacle and turn it into strength. To welcome every event, not because you wanted it, but because it is here and your job is to use it. To love your fate is to say, this thing that is happening, this challenge, this pain, this is precisely what I needed to become the person I am meant to be. It's the story of the wrestler. A wrestler doesn't complain that his training partner is strong and skilled. He is grateful for it. The stronger his partner, the more he learns. The tougher the fight, the greater his own development. He needs the resistance to build his muscle. Our souls are the same. We need the resistance of life to build our spiritual and emotional muscle. To run from every difficulty is to sentence ourselves to a life of perpetual weakness. This doesn't mean you won't feel grief. When Seneca lost his beloved young son, he grieved deeply. He wrote of the emptiness, the tears, the ache. He was human. The goal of Stoicism is not to become an unfeeling robot. It is to become a wise human. The wise person feels the pain of the first dart. They allow the natural human emotion of grief to wash over them. But they do not throw the second dart. They do not tell themselves the story that my life is now meaningless, or I will never be happy again. They grieve, they mourn, they feel the full depth of the loss, but they do so within the larger container of their philosophy. They remember that death is a natural part of life's cycle. They remember to be grateful for the time they had. They remember that their task now is to live with courage and to honor the memory of the one they lost by continuing to act with virtue. Grief and gratitude can coexist. Pain and purpose can coexist. This is the nuanced reality of a well-lived life. It is not about eradicating emotion. It is about contextualizing it. It is about holding it within a framework of reason, purpose, and acceptance. It is about feeling the sharp sting of loss, while simultaneously loving the fate that gave you someone so wonderful to lose in the first place. It is a heartbreakingly beautiful and incredibly powerful way to live. So look at your own life. Look at the obstacles you are facing right now. The financial struggle, the difficult relationship, the health concern, the career setback. Your first instinct, your conditioning, is to see these as problems, as impediments to your happiness. What if you chose to see them differently? What if you chose to see them as your perfect training partners, sent by fate to teach you exactly what you need to learn? What if that difficult boss is your trainer in patience? What if that financial anxiety is your trainer in resourcefulness and a reevaluation of your true needs? What if that chronic pain is your trainer in separating sensation from suffering, in finding a still point of peace even amidst physical discomfort? This is amor fati. It is the ultimate act of creative power. It is taking the script that life has handed you, with all its unexpected plot twists and tragic turns, and choosing to perform it with such mastery, such grace, such courage, that you turn it into a work of art. You are not the author of the script, but you are its star performer, and the quality of the performance is entirely up to you. You are not defined by what happens to you. You are defined by how you respond. In that response, in that choice, lies the entire dignity and meaning of a human life. And within that choice is the unshakable knowledge that no matter how fierce the storm, no matter how heavy the burden, you have the power to meet it, to use it, and to transform it. You are not the fragile thing that is broken by the wave. You are the shoreline that is shaped by it, becoming more beautifully defined with every impact. And so we arrive at the heart of it all, the cultivation of character. This is the ultimate aim of the Stoic path. Not happiness, not success, not comfort, but a good character. What the Greeks called eudaimonia. Not a fleeting feeling of pleasure, but a deep, abiding state of human flourishing that comes from living a life of virtue and excellence. It is the quiet inner satisfaction of knowing that you are becoming the best version of yourself. Character is not forged in the moments of ease. It is not revealed when everything is going your way. Character is what you are in the dark. It is the choice you make when no one is watching. It is the integrity you maintain when it is easier to cut corners. It is the kindness you show when you have been shown none. It is the truth you speak when a lie would be more convenient. Character is the sum total of all your choices, all your assents, all your responses to the river of life. Every day presents you with 1,000 opportunities to build this character. Every interaction is a workshop. The rude cashier is not just a nuisance. She is a chance to practice patience. The tedious project at work is not just a chore. It is a chance to practice diligence and attention to detail. The friend who lets you down is not just a source of pain. They are a chance to practice forgiveness and to set healthy boundaries. The sudden temptation to indulge a harmful habit is not just a craving. It is a chance to practice self-discipline. Life is constantly providing you with the curriculum for your own moral and spiritual development. The only question is whether you are paying attention. This is why gratitude is such a vital Stoic practice. Not a Pollyanna-ish gratitude that ignores the world's suffering, but a profound, clear-eyed gratitude for the raw material of existence itself. Marcus Aurelius would begin his day by reminding himself that he would encounter meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, and treacherous people. He didn't do this to become cynical. He did this to prepare himself so that he would not be surprised or disturbed. He would then remind himself that these people were his kin, part of the same human family, sharing in the same divine spark of reason, and that his job was not to be harmed by them, but to work with them like the upper and lower rows of teeth. He practiced a form of cognitive gratitude. He would look at his hand and be grateful for its function, for its ability to grasp and build. He would be grateful for his eyes, for their ability to perceive the world. He would be grateful for his reason, the master faculty that could make sense of it all. He practiced being grateful for the very fact of his existence, for the opportunity to play his part on the great stage of the cosmos, however brief. This kind of gratitude short-circuits so many negative emotions. It is difficult to feel envy when you are truly grateful for what you have. It is difficult to feel resentment when you are grateful for the lessons an antagonist is teaching you. It is difficult to feel despair when you are grateful for the simple fact of being alive, for the breath in your lungs, for the sky above your head. Gratitude anchors you in the present moment, in the reality of what is, rather than the anxious fictions of what might be or the regretful ghosts of what was. It pulls your focus away from what you lack and places it firmly on what you possess. And what do you truly possess? You possess this moment, this breath. You possess your ability to choose. You possess your own character. And that, the Stoics would argue, is the only possession that can never be lost, the only wealth that truly matters. Everything else is a temporary loan from fortune, to be used wisely and returned gracefully when the time comes. Your house, your car, your very body tikam. These are not yours. They are on loan. Enjoy them, use them well, be a good steward of them, but do not mistake them for your true self. Your true self is the user, the steward, the chooser. When you begin to live this way, a profound shift occurs. You stop being a feather in the wind, blown about by every changing circumstance. You become a stone, a rock, rooted, solid, unshakable. The winds of fortune still blow, the storms of emotion still rage, but they blow against you. They rage around you. They no longer pass through you and sweep you away. You develop a kind of spiritual gravity, a centeredness. People will feel it. They will be drawn to that quiet strength, that inner stillness. You become a sanctuary for others, precisely because you have first built the sanctuary within yourself. This is not a journey with a final destination. You never arrive at being the perfect Stoic sage. It is a lifelong practice, a daily discipline. There will be days you fail, days you get swept away by the river, days you get angry at the traffic, anxious about the future, sad about the past, days you throw the second dart with all your might. The key is not to judge yourself for these moments. The key is to notice them and with gentle, firm compassion to simply begin again, to return to the breath, to return to the riverbank, to remember once more who you truly are. Okay, I lost my temper. I identified with the anger. I let it carry me away. What can I learn from this? What was the trigger? What was the story I told myself? Let me see it clearly, without shame. And now let me begin again. Every failure is simply more data, more raw material, more fuel for the fire. So as we bring this meditation to a close, let the world slowly come back into focus. But don't let go of this feeling. Carry this stillness with you. Let it be the quiet space from which you engage with the world. When you walk out into the noise, remember the silence within. When you are faced with a demand, remember your power to choose your response. When a wave of emotion rises, remember that you are the sky, not the storm. When you face an obstacle, remember that this is your trainer, your partner in the great work of building your soul. When you feel the sting of pain, remember the difference between the first dart and the second. When you look at the world, do so with gratitude for the chance to be here, to learn, to grow, and to love. You are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are not your body. You are not your circumstances. You are the silent watcher, the calm chooser, the unshakable will. You are the conscious presence that gives life to it all, but is not defined by any of it. Breathe, feel that steady rhythm. It is the pulse of your own unshakable being. The world can bring its chaos. It can bring its beauty and its terror. Let it come. You will be here to meet it, not with fear, not with desperation, but with the quiet, powerful, and liberating grace of a mind that has come home to itself. You are the fortress, and within its walls you are and always will be free.